Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm going to start evaluating several other categories of archery equipment. This series is going to be called Archery Rests Ad Nauseum. Top shelf archery equipment is getting expensive, and it would seem that all the different facets of compound archery are in a race to see who can make the most expensive version of whatever piece of equipment they offer. We now have $2,000 bows, $350 releases, $600 sights, $500+ stabilizer systems, $500 arrows, and now $300 to $350 rests in the form of the Bodoodle Influence. The Bodoodle Influence Rest was released at ATA in January, and I either missed it or I wasn't paying attention. I just learned it existed when Lancaster Archery put out a new product video, maybe when their stuff came in stock. But nice work on the marketing, boys. It's always good for sales when your product has been out for 9 months and no one knows it exists. Also, there haven't been any consumer reviews on it yet, so I think I might be the first customer to review it. So this now takes the slot as the most expensive rest on the market at $300 for the standard version and $350 if you get the deluxe package. The Hamsky Epsilon was the most expensive rest and is considered one of the best iterations of a limb-activated drop-away rest. So the big questions I hope to answer regarding the Influence are: how well does it perform? How well is it constructed? What does it do to justify its price tag? And does it do anything better than its lower priced competition? In the box with the Influence, with the standard model anyway, you get the rest, a mounting bolt, a length of cord, a two-sided printed sheet with the instructions, a stick-on limb pad to secure the activation cord, and 2 extra button head cap screws to replace the launcher angle adjustment screws on the bottom to convert the release to a lizard tongue or blade rest. I was going to say I didn't know what those screws were for, but then I went and actually read the instructions. After 4 years of having an online store, I am now a strong advocate of reading the materials that are provided to familiarize myself with a product. A lot of questions and inquiries can be avoided if people just read the item description and the instructions. This will be the only PSA for this video. The deluxe version comes with an extra riser mounting bolt and a longer mounting bar to adjust the position of the rest for the purposes of tuning and personal preference. I'll probably put pictures up over my head just to show what that looks like. This rest offers a lot of customization in the form of adjustable mounting positions for the body of the rest on the riser and positions for the launcher and full containment arm. There's also a lot of bolts to check if you start to hear something rattle. The hardware looks to be black oxide-coated steel, and most of them are stamped YFS, which is apparently a good brand of screw. Bolts and screws are no longer manufactured in the United States, and as UltraView is currently finding out, apparently, the grade of your hardware is not where you want to cut costs. Bodoodle, in this case, did not skimp out on their hardware, so good for them. That said, my preference would be stainless steel because rust bothers me a lot when you see it on equipment that costs as much as this or any other high-end piece of archery equipment. But good stainless fasteners are not inexpensive. Some companies do spend the money for good ones, and I give credit where credit is due. The big selling point for the Influence is that it is a limb-driven rest with the capability of locking its launcher in the up position. I initially wrote it off as a limb driver or Hamsky wannabe until I found that out. It's not the first limb-activated rest to do it, though. The ripcord lock got there first, but it is geared more towards hunting, as evidenced by the size of arrow its launcher can fit. It's a lot skinnier. Along with having the potential to be used in hunting and target, the Influence looks to be more ruggedly built compared to the lock, albeit way more expensive. I kind of need 3 hands to do this on camera, but the Influence accomplishes this feat by pressing out on the activation arm, i.e. the metal piece that the cord attaches to. Bodoodle is calling this piece the thumb button for some reason. This causes the launcher to snap forcefully into the up position, and when you come to full draw, the mechanism re-engages and pulls the launcher down and out of the way of your vanes. The ripcord lock does the same thing, but it actually has a button. On the Bodoodle Influence, you'd be forgiven for not knowing that this is even a feature because there's no pad. It doesn't have a pad or a button to press or any marking on the so-called thumb button. You'd be hard-pressed to stumble onto it if you didn't know it was there. That's not really a problem because you have to assume that somebody who bought it knows it was there, but I've actually had an instance in the past where somebody didn't know there was I was at a knife shop and there was a Microtech LCC automatic, if anybody knows that, if we have any knife aficionados. It was one of the dual action hidden button ones, and I pressed on the bolster and deployed the blade, and they didn't even know. I should have bought it before I showed it to them because it was because they were selling it for the price of the manual. But yeah, they jacked up the price after I did that, and they didn't even know it was a dual action automatic. How about that? When you press on the activation arm of the influence, you can feel the internals sliding over each other until a launcher snaps up. It feels like all metal construction, so I do hope it holds up to prolonged use. The launcher itself looks like injection molded ABS plastic, which is fine, and it has enough room between the forks to accommodate just about any size of arrow from micro to 27s, and is tapered so that even if you go with like a 166, it should sit and center itself. The launcher should perform its job just fine, but you'd think a rest with an almost entirely metal construction from a company that is known for its metal pronged rests would have a metal launcher. Granted, certain things are better off not being made of metal, but it's in their sales pitch on Specialty Archery's website, which I think owns the brand of Bodoodle. And their sales pitch says, and I quote, "Introducing the Bodoodle Compound Hunting Arrow Rests, the rests that are 100% American-made with all metal parts. You won't find any plastic parts on our arrow rests. And they're dependable and easy to tune. With no cords to break or get in the way, Bodoodle arrow rests have stood the test of time. These arrow rests are perfect for hunting, and all Bodoodle arrow rests come with a lifetime warranty. So if you're looking for a high-quality, durable arrow rest that will last a lifetime, look no further than Bodoodle." So yeah, with the influence in their product line, they might need to tweak that. All that being said, now that I think about it, the plastic launcher is probably going to be quieter than a metal one since it won't vibrate or produce any sounds akin to any kind of like metal on metal. So as long as it doesn't wear out, it might have an advantage. I'm ragging on this, but these are actually my favorite rests of all time, and I'll talk about them at some point. You can also swap out the launcher if you decide you would like to use a different launcher, if you can find one that fits, or you can modify the one you want to use because the full containment arm has two different height positions, so you can move it down or up as needed. So if you went with a shorter launcher from a different company, you can still get full containment. Bodoodle recommends Cousins brand launcher blades, though I'm not sure if they carry any kind of full containment drop-away launcher type pieces. Please disregard that my shirt just changed color. The launcher mounting screws are spaced to install a blade and use it as a non-drop-away blade rest, and you have two different mounting positions. There are no blades provided since they'd have to include a bunch of them in order to cover all the different arrow setups people may be using. If you don't like the ABS launcher, the hole spacing seems to be pretty universal, but the slot they milled out around the holes may limit your choices. I tried to mount a Hamskea G-Flex to the influence, and there wasn't enough clearance on one side in one set of holes and the other side in the other set of holes. It's nothing a few seconds with my Dremel wouldn't fix, but I think this was a missed opportunity on the engineer's part not to make enough room and open up a whole myriad of different options for launchers. There are micro-adjustable windage and elevation adjustments on the influence. You need an Allen key to unlock the adjustments, and there are no detents for click adjustment. There are hash marks on the body of the sight to keep track of how far it moves, so it should be pretty easy to dial it in once you set it. The micro-adjust knobs can turn a little with the locking screws tightened down, so if your rest starts to buzz, check those and you can silence them by turning them and applying tension to the threads. Something to think about. This rest is constructed in a way that it is just about impossible not to get it set up to your preferred center shot. It looks to have enough adjustment to be able to set it up on a bow regardless of your tuning skills. Not everyone has access to a bow press, so as long as you have enough windage on your sight to get it dialed in, then you should be good to go. Mounting it to the bow is burger hole only, so no options for an integrate mount setup just yet. Most mounting brackets for most rests are a one-piece affair, and adjustment for the rest position against the riser or out away from it is limited to the amount of room in the slot the mounting bolt goes into. Some of them are slotted and you can move them in or out. The Influence, by contrast, has a two-piece mounting bracket with a piece that bolts to the riser with its own bolt, and then the rest attaches to that with its own bolt. The standard model is only capable of attaching via a single bolt, and the deluxe model can be attached with two bolts if your riser has two burger holes. As for the mounting bar on the rest, there are 4 positions on the standard model that you can set your rest. Accessing all 4 positions requires you to flip over the bracket that's bolted to the riser. They could have just made it a dovetail and given you infinite positions, but this is how they did it. The deluxe model has far more mounting positions than are probably needed, and I'll show pictures. I'll put pictures up on here. It actually looks kind of ridiculous, but I'm sure somebody will be able to use it. I think it was Lancaster Archery's video that suggested that you could mount the deluxe version of this rest behind the riser bridge of a Hoyt instead of in front or inside it. I don't know why someone might want to do that, other than if you're running very short arrows to gain speed like the old school overdraws. But regardless, that's an option for those who want to put the money up for the deluxe model, and it's a unique feature to the rest, to this particular rest. Well, not this particular rest, but the deluxe model of this particular rest. Alright, so now for some issues. The activation cable sticks out pretty far on the Influence as compared to the Hamskea Epsilon or ripcord. The ripcord actually contains it internally and keeps it very close to the riser. If you use this for hunting, which might not be the best idea for reasons I will elaborate on shortly, it might interfere with your choice of bow-mounted quiver. The activation arm is threaded all the way through with 3 mounting positions, and I don't see why you couldn't flip that arm over and mount the bolt on the inside instead of the outside so the cord doesn't stick out so far. That's probably how I'm going to run mine. The activation arm is threaded, and the mounting bolt for the thumb button screws directly through it. So there is no adjustment of angle, nor is there any chance that it will slide or shift. So like the Hamskea has a hex, like a hex setup so that you can lock it down and adjust the angle. This one doesn't. It's just one angle, but it's got 3 different positions, so you can adjust the amount of pull you get from your limbs. Hamskea is definitely the market they were going for, but the ripcord lock is the one that has the same feature set, and it's also a lot less expensive, and it also keeps the cord much closer to the riser. The cord itself that came with the Influence is crap. It does the job of an activation cord, but whatever it's made of burns instead of melting. So when you cut it to size and try to burn the ends, it doesn't form a molten ball like a D-loop cord. So eventually it'll fray, or your knots might come undone because there's no ball at the end to stop them. I use BCY24 for my cords anyway, but I shouldn't need anything other than what comes in the box to get any rest set up, let alone the most expensive one on the market. The attachment system for the cord consists of 2 washers and a bolt to squeeze the activation cord between the washers and hold it tight, and I find this design a bit wanting. The cord came loose on me after I initially set it up after 5 arrows. I tightened it back down as much as I could, and it came loose again after I noticed that the launcher was creeping its way back up into its top position and sitting up higher in its resting position. The package doesn't come with any kind of cord tensioner like the Hamskea and the ripcords, so all you have is those 2 smooth washers between which you place the cord, pull it tight so the arm comes down, and then tighten the ever-loving shit out of it to keep it from slipping. Unfortunately, it started slipping again after a couple of arrows, so I had to try and feed the cord through one of the extra holes on the arm, or rather the thumb button, and try to tie it off. That was a pain in the ass and didn't really work. You can do it with the cord loose before you tie it at the limb, but then you have the same problem of keeping it tight and tying it off down there. I tried taking the activation arm off and then tying everything up and had the same problem of getting sufficient cord tension. You know what might have made this easier? A cord tensioner, or a better clamping system for the cord. It's actually holding right now, but this is just me pulling on it, and I haven't loosed any arrows with it since I mushed it down again. But I'm going to have to probably buy a Hamskea cord tensioner to ensure that it doesn't come loose, and I'm not pleased that it doesn't come with something similar. Hamskea is a complete package, Ripcord is a complete package, and I assume QAD is as well, though I've never used one. Separate note, the instructions do not offer any more insight on how to secure the cord other than put it between the washers and tighten the bolt. So that's it. So I don't think I'm doing anything that I'm not supposed to, or I'm setting this thing up wrong. It's just not, there's a missing link here. So the last issue, and arguably a big one, depending on your intended usage, the mechanism to disengage the activation arm to pop the launcher up, arguably its selling point that's supposed to put it above the Hamskea, makes a noise, sometimes two noises, when it re-engages. And it's a fairly noticeable noise. Allow me to demonstrate. Click, clunk. So if you're going to use this thing for hunting, I don't think that's going to cut it. If you're trying to make as little noise as possible when you're trying to sneakily draw on an animal, I can see that potentially giving you away. By contrast, the ripcord lock is quieter when you hit the button to snap up the launcher, and it makes a much quieter noise when it re-engages. Now you can operate the rest quietly by foregoing the use of that feature when you absolutely need to be quiet, but then there's no point in spending the extra money for this one over buying a Hamskea that would otherwise do everything that this one does. Now, I'm a target archer, I'm not a bow hunter, so this isn't going to be a problem for me unless I start getting distracted by it when I'm on the 3D or field course. However, I do know a lot of bow hunters, and they don't like when one piece of equipment makes more noise than another. So I think Bodoodle is going to need to address that and maybe break their already broken code and add some more plastic and maybe some rubber in there along with it. As a target rest, I think it'll do just fine. Its limb-driven rests are pretty bulletproof to begin with. It's a very simple design, even with the extra mechanism to pop it up. But as a hunting rest, I think it definitely needs a tweak or two. But those are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and happy hunting. Hello again. I just want to make sure that I'm showing or displaying this properly mounted on the bow to make sure that I didn't make some kind of a setup mistake and that it was just making that noise because I was doing it in my hand, even though I kind of already know because I heard it initially while I was shooting it, but I wanted to make sure you saw what was going on with it. So here's the noise of the rest when you snap up the launcher arm. And then you can actually re-engage it at the bottom just by pushing down and going in. But this is what it's like when you put an arrow in place. So you are mostly able to quiet it down a bit if you keep your finger on the arrow. However, the problem is, and I have a trainer lock pin so I don't shoot my rest or release wall. But the problem is, when you pull back, you're going to hear a click for part of it starting to re-engage, and then a clunk when it actually, when the arm actually re-engages. And you should be able to move this around so you can actually see that arm pop back out again. Let's try it again. Click, clunk. One more time. Click, clunk. See if you can watch it doing its thing. There it goes. So yeah, I don't think it was just me. It wasn't the way that I was holding it. It still makes a noise, and I'm not going to talk over it like the Lancaster archery video. Clunk. See? That's a bit of a problem if you're planning on using this for hunting.